The Carroll A. Deering was an American cargo ship built in 1919 and was among the last wooden schooners built before their eclipse by iron shipbuilding. It was last spotted with its crew when passing through Cape Lookout, North Carolina on January 28, 1921, while it was traveling back from Brazil after delivering a cargo of coal there. She was found abandoned 3 days later off the Outer Banks of North Carolina at the infamous Diamond Shoals, a site notorious for numerous shipwrecks. When rescue ships approached and finally boarded the ship over a month later due to bad weather, they found that the ship's entire crew with their personal belongings, the logbook and the ship's 2 lifeboats were missing. The ship's navigational equipments like the steering wheel and rudder were all damaged, but dinner was still on the stove as though the crew was waiting to be fed. A few months later, the ghost ship was destroyed so it wouldn't be a hazard to mariners in the area. While the disappearance of the ship's crew has been hypothesized to have been caused by weather conditions, pirates, and even communists, there is still no conclusion as to what happened to them, and it remains a mystery. In June 1947, 2 American vessels were navigating the Straits of Malacca when they picked up several distress messages from a nearby Dutch merchant ship, Orang Munan. The messages were sent in Morse code and read that all officers and crew, including the captain on board, were dead and that the radio operator himself was about to meet the same fate. When one of the ships, the Silver Star, located and boarded the apparently undamaged Orang Munan in an attempt to rescue it, the ship was found littered with dead bodies everywhere. The bodies were found lying on their back with their upturned faces to the sun above, staring with mouths wide open as if in fear. No survivors were located and no visible signs of injuries on the dead bodies were observed. The Orang Munan was then towed to a port before mysteriously catching fire, exploding and sinking. Skeptics have argued that the story of Orang Munan is an urban legend because there is no record of the vessel's existence in the first place. And if the Silver Star did attend to a rescue operation in the waters around the time, it was never officially logged. However, one theory prevails that would explain why so little is known about the ship's fate. It may be possible that the ship may have been involved in smuggling operations of illegal chemical substances and the crew was poisoned by the chemicals and nerve agents that they were transporting. The seawater could have also then reacted with the chemicals later, causing the reported fire and explosion. But perhaps the truth lies buried somewhere beneath the waves and we will never know. Probably the most famous real-life ghost ship story embraces the Mary Celeste. It was found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean in 1872 in a completely unharmed condition with all its sails still up, the crew's personal belongings intact, enough food and water supply to last for 6 months and a cargo hold of over 1,500 alcohol barrels untouched. The only things missing were the lifeboat, the captain's logbook and most importantly the whole crew. Only 29 days earlier, the Mary Celeste had set sail from New York Harbor to Genoa, Italy. On the ship on board were the ship's captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah and his 2-year-old daughter Sophia, along with 8 other crew members. Since pirate attacks could not be held responsible for such a phenomenon, theories of crew mutiny, watersprout killing, and consumption of poisonous food leading to madness came into being. However, the last entry on the ship's daily log reveals nothing unusual, and inside the ship, all appear to be in order. Thus, the cause behind this ghost ship remains unsolved. Zebrina was a British ship which was built in 1873 for river trade trips in South America. It served for well over 4 decades, proving to be a sturdy and reliable ship, and was later transferred to Europe where it continued serving its purpose well. On October of 1917, the ship departed Falmouth, England, commanded by Captain Martin, with a crew of 5 and a cargo of coal bound for France. 2 days later, it was discovered ashore on Rosal Point, south of France. When rescue crews approached the ship, they found it without any damage except for some disarrangement of her rigging, with its entire crew missing. The last entry in the logbook revealed that the ship had left Falmouth and there was nothing further. At the time, many hypothesized that the crew was abducted by a German U-boat, given that Zebrina was delivering fuel to northern France, making it a legitimate military target. But a German attack doesn't explain how the crew alone were targeted and why the French were able to salvage the valuable cargo themselves. Another theory is that a U-boat did appear next to the ship and removed all the crew members from it. But the submarine must have been either disturbed or destroyed by an Allied force before it could sink Zebrina, leaving it a ghost ship adrift. The most convincing theory is that the crew were washed away from the deck because of an underwater explosion, and then the ship sailed ahead without them. No trace of Zebrina's crew was ever found, and their true fate is still unknown. The MV Zoida was a wooden ship built in 1931 as a luxury yacht. A couple of decades later, it was bought by a Samoan sailor and then became a merchant ship. In 1955 though, Zoida's service came to an abrupt and mysterious end. On October 3rd, it set sail for another trading voyage that should have taken no more than 2 days, but the ship never arrived back. There was no distress signal or any other signs of Zoida's presence anywhere between its departure and arrival points. A search and rescue party was dispatched to find the ship, and for the next 6 days they scouted the area of nearly 100,000 square miles. On October 12, the mission returned to the base empty-handed. Zoida had vanished without a trace. It was only a month later that another merchant ship, Tuvalu, noticed the missing vessel 600 miles away from its route, drifting in the open sea and listing heavily. When the sailors boarded the ship, they found that all of its crew and passengers, 25 people total, were missing, along with all the cargo the vessel had been carrying. The ship was in very poor condition with corroded pipes, and the radio was tuned to the International Distress Channel, meaning that the crew had been trying to ask for help. But they couldn't reach anyone because the radio cable had been damaged, limiting the range to 2 miles. The lifeboats were missing as well, indicating that people on board must have left the ship. However, the extreme buoyancy of the ship made sinking nearly impossible. Investigators were puzzled as to why the crew had not remained on board and waited for help. Unfortunately, they seemed to have taken the logbook with them, leaving the rescue team clueless as to what had happened. Even today, the mystery of MV Zoida hasn't been solved yet. No one knows where the crew and passengers had gone and what had caused them to leave. SS Beichimo is perhaps one of the most notable ghost ships in history. This large cargo steamer was built in 1914 in Sweden and served for over 16 years, trading provisions for pelts with native tribes of Alaska and Canada. But then on October 1st, 1931, Beichimo got caught in pack ice. At first, it seemed the crew would be able to wait it out and continue on their route because the ship broke free in a couple of days. But in less than a week, it became caught again, this time for good. In another week, a rescue party was sent to fetch 22 of the Beichimo's crew while another 15 remained behind to wait through the winter if necessary and get the ship back. But a month later, after a powerful blizzard struck their camp, the sailors went out of their shelters only to find the ship gone. Luckily, a few days later, a native hunter told them Beichimo hadn't been lost yet. It seemed it about 45 miles from where they had been stationed. They managed to track it down but decided the ship wouldn't survive the winter, so they took the most valuable cargo from the hold and abandoned it. The sailors were wrong though, because Beichimo did survive that winter and many more that followed. When the ice broke, it sailed away on its own, drifting listlessly along the shores of Canada and Alaska. There were numerous sightings of the ghost ship, sometimes adrift in the open sea and at other times stuck in the pack ice again. People attempted to board and salvage it, but weather conditions or lack of equipment always prevented them. SS Beichimo was last sighted by native Alaskans in 1969, 38 years after its abandonment. What became of it later remains unknown.